response. So that's why I say the more smells you can get there, I think the better off you are. To keep that animal there and to keep him working the set. And a lot of times if I do get diggers and I know it's a canine, I don't like to, waste time with them. And I've come up with a set that usually works on those, and it falls back to the whole curiosity thing. I know most of you have seen like canines, they'll dig out a mole, hill or a tunnel, they'll break a tunnel trying to dig out a mole or a field mouse or something. And I'll make basically the same set. I'll dig out, I ain't got my hammer, you figure a trapper would leave his hammer. Dig out a deep hole here, and I dig a hole in here, dig a hole back in here, and I'll bed my trap, and then I'll make my trap bed level with the bottom of those holes, and I'll have it recessed pretty good, and I'll just take it like a toy mouse, gray mouse from Walmart, and set it right on the pan, just right there on top of the pan. And then, if you've got a set over here that they're just not paying any attention to, or they're digging, or they're digging out, a lot of times if they see that mouse, they throw caution in the wind, because that's not a smell, that's food. I mean, his belly's gonna quit growling just as soon as that mouse is in his belly, and it is sitting right there. He can pounce on that thing, and it's it. They throw caution into the wind. It's not a guaranteed thing, but it does work. And when it does work, you come in, they're sitting there, both front feet just locked up, tight as can be. And with stuff like, you can't waste a lot of time on diggers if you're trying to catch fur. Sometimes you got to think outside the box. I had one on a property, and I think he finally died of old age, because this is not, and it had to be the same dog. I went in one winter, and it turned off blue coal. And I was going and pounding insects. I was just short for time, and I was just peat mossing my traps in, sticking them in the ground. Well, the trap freeze to the ground underneath. Peat moss never froze. Peat moss worked fine. Pan fired, the whole thing. The jaws had froze to the ground. It was sitting there, fired, and the jaws froze to the ground. So for 2 years after that, you could not set a trap on that property. It was not dug up. And there was coyote tracks all around it. And I think somebody finally killed that one, because I went back and I ain't had any more traps dug up. So that's a lot of little things that can cause you problems. I found for the most part that really, really works for gray fox. And I did last year. I was coming out of a property, it was actually the same property, and coming down through the pasture, and it's a fenced-in wet area, and then there was some little rock cliffs on the other side. A gray fox sticks its head up out behind the rock. Well, I stopped the four-wheeler, got my 22, threw down on it, pow, shot, hit it, killed it. And I looked, and about the time another one ran out of the briars in the wet area, another gray fox. So they had a little crossing area in the center of the wet area. I went over there and put this set in. Every day for the next 3 days, I come in, and right there's what I found with this right here. That trap was dug out every day. I'm assuming that fox associated my scent with killing his mate with my scent here. And what I ended up doing, I kept putting it back. And I said, well, I'll bed another trap back here behind it. and I get his hind end. He'll come up here, come around, try to dig the trap out, and I'll catch him in that one, trying to dig this one up. Come back, that one was dug out. This one was still in the ground. So I took that trap out, put that trap back here, took that trap out, put it back here, and had the fox. So, you know, they're smart. They can figure a lot out through smell. And just through the scent that falls off of your body. You can never eliminate scent. I tell people, you know, if you want to completely make a set scent-free, then you've got to build this set out of a plastic bubble. You got to go around inside a plastic bubble. But yet the plastic bubble is going to leave scent on the ground, and that fox or that coyote is going to know a plastic bubble's been there trapping. So you can't get around the nose. You just got to learn how to outsmart it at times. Any more questions? Dead flush with the ground. I want my jaws sitting as level with the ground that I can get just enough coverage over them that the wind's not going to blow it off or they're not going to get exposed. If I'm in severe weather, I'll go a little bit deeper, but I don't want, if I got a ½ inch maximum over them. A lot of times, if it's going to be calm and we're not going to have a whole lot of wind, and I use peat moss, I'll just have a light sift of peat moss over it. And because what I'm trying to get commitment, you know, if you get an animal messing around too much, he's going to uncover your set. But if that trap's in there solid, and that you got to start from a solid base. I like to, when I put that trap in the ground, I want that hole to look just like that trap most of the time. And I left my trap in here, so I can't show you how to dig a hole. But most of the time I'll dig it exactly what this trap is, like a cereal bowl. I'll leave a good pocket underneath it. But I want the trap to rest here. And then I'll just take my digging part and I'll cut out 2 little notches for my weavers. And I want that trap sitting in there right like that. And I'll have probably 2 inches of a hole underneath them. Where I use drags, I'll have that trap. And I mean, literally, it'll be like that right there. And I'll just take the digger part on my hammer, I'll just cut a line about right there. And I'll pull the grass back, the sod, and I'll stick it chain underneath it, and I'll just push it back down. And then I'll just leave this over here like that. That's, you know, metal out in the field is nothing to a canine. And I'll have enough of a void under that. If any moisture does collect, any rain does get in under it, it's got a void to fill up before it actually reaches my trap. But if that trap, if your jaws are in good and tight, it will shed a lot of water. And with your peat moss on top, it's going to shed. It takes a lot of rain to get that trap saturated to the point it won't work.
You cover the peat moss with some dry dirt?
Yeah, usually I'll try to get just enough to sift on top. And I use a sifter. It's got a 1/4 inch screen in it. And I don't pre-sift my peat moss. I don't dry it out. I use it just straight. I don't get it wet. I try to pick my bales so they're not really wet, but I want some moisture in my peat moss, because if it's super dry, you get a windstorm, it's gone. And most of the time when your peat moss is gone and the weather clears off, you'll come back and there'll be a crow sitting there with its beak in its jaw, or a raven. and because they'll come up, they'll see that pan sticking there, and they'll walk up. And but usually I'll sift like that. Come in. I'll pack everything in but that pan. I'll cover it about that much. And that's about it, just to hold the peat moss down. And that peat moss has some moisture, but it's got enough moisture in it that it's not really light. If it gets too dry, it don't take much, this is gone.
Use pan cover?
No, I don't use any pan covers, just peat moss, and you know, if it's a lot of snow on, I won't even put dirt on it. I just peat moss it up, and you know, maybe a little skiff of snow over top of it through the sifter. Let it fall. If it's freezing, I'll fill that pocket up underneath and make sure. If it gets really cold, you've got to use antifreeze, because on a flat set where you have the outside of your jaws is packed in tight to the ground, you have to have antifreeze to keep those jaws from freezing to the shoulder.
Use glycol or something, antifreeze?
Most of the time I use the powder stuff, the calcium chloride. And I'll just tell you, I get the fine powder where I don't have to put a lot, I can just put it around that outer edge where my trap's setting. It works really well.
Going back to your diggers, have you ever made like a dummy set where you don't put a trap in and then come back a few days later, see it's dug up, and then you put a trap in just as...
I've tried going out and testing an area, you know, to see if there is animal, but I found it's easier just put a trail camera out and watch an area for a little while, see what you pick up, than trying to actually go out and construct a set too. And most of the places I trap, unless I get new ground, I've trapped it year after year after year, and most of my sets I pretty much go back to. And so a lot of times I'll just go out in the summer, and if I've got a new property, I'll get on Google Maps and I'll find where those funnel points are, find all my saddles, my main travel ways. I'll pop a trail camera or two out, and you know, just see what's naturally using that area, and then I can come back in the season and I'll know where to set it up. And I usually try to set it up a little broader, and then that first season I'll take that information and narrow the property down and get it to the least amount of traps I have to set on that property to be the most efficient. I've run the palsy trip pans I've run a lot of bridgers over the years, and they tend to range about 2.5 to 3 pounds on the palsy trips. I started switching over to the no BS traps now, which are a little bigger, but I don't like to get more than 3 pounds. I want enough tension on that trap that animal will commit. You don't want the pan to fall out under his foot. And that's another thing I like about peat moss versus pan covers. If you use pan covers, you've got a void under your trap. There's nothing there. So when that animal steps, you know, if that pan's gonna fall, it's gonna fall. There's no resistance. If you've got peat moss, your peat moss is gonna work under your pan. Well, if you use a fine sifter, when you sift it on, you know, you can have a half-inch of peat moss under there, and it'll compact enough. So that helps give you some resistance, because when an animal steps, or you know yourself, if you step on something and it gives out and under your foot, you're going to be more apt to pull back, because you're going to stumble, you're going to trip. That's what's going to go through that animal, so you'll retract. So when he steps on something, because something else has piqued his interest, he's going to be more likely to commit when he feels that resistance. And that's another reason I like the peat moss. And I try to stay around that 2.5, 3 pounds of panfish. And I just love catching possums.
Yeah.
I feed the eagles at the house.
Do you use one set of gloves for the whole entire thing, like when you put your scent out and everything, or do you take them off?
Yeah, I just keep a pair of gloves on my trap bag, and I don't do it more so for scent, because if I'm out on the line, you know, I'm handling everything. You know, the only thing that has to be scent free is this right here in your hole. I don't care what you want to do. You can have a party around that trap, invite over 20 friends. If this is scent free and that animal commits, that's where he's going to be. If everything out here gets his attention versus this, then this is where his foot's going to be in here, and he's not going to be digging this out. So you know, as far as scent goes, I think you need, the two most important things is this, having a good base and scent control when you're trapped, and having a solid foundation that your trap's bedded in. That trap does not move in any shape, form, or fashion. Any more questions?
You catch a possum in a fox set, using the same traps and stuff?
Yeah. I'm like when you know people used to say, you know, dig it up, move over here, dig that dirt up, take it to the next county and incinerate it, and burn your gloves, and you know, that kind of got old fast. I have to do things. If I don't do things repetitive over and over and over and over and over, and that's one reason I kind of stick with one set, I get distracted. And so I try to just keep things basic, and I've learned that, you know, like Lisa said, you know, that everything here smells like one thing, then nothing still smells like a trap. Or, you know, it's, you know, nothing's out of the ordinary. If you have this trap, and this trap smells like Old Spice, and everything here smells like coyote, what are they going to do? They're going to go after the Old Spice. And that's kind of my view. It don't matter what I catch. I mean, when that trap gets gummed up and it's packed full of mud, and you just can't set it, that's I take it out and I wash it, and I'll re-dye it, I'll re-wax it, the whole thing. But until it gets to that point, as long as it's producing and as long as it's working, it's going to stay right there and keep working. And then if I do go to a new trap, that new trap is going over here. Because if you put a new trap in this area, you've got something totally different. Because you think a trap is clean, it's dyed and waxed. Well, to a canine, that dye and that wax has an odor. It's called dye and wax. And it don't smell like anything. It's right there. That, you know, that it should smell like coyote. Any other questions?
Where do you buy your peat moss? At a garden center?
I used to get it at